Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Dave Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you back to our Civil Human Bible Study. I'm a civil human minister, and what that means is that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. And the way that I'm approaching this Bible study, these scripture studies today, is as a human being. And that's the one rule that I'm trying to do so with, which means I'm going at it as just a fellow human being like you, looking for those teachings that I can apply across the board. And I want to do that civilly by respecting the shared basic human needs that we all have. So today we're sitting in Gasworks Park. We're in Seattle. It's a beautiful scenic vista there with some lovely Canadian geese that seem to have all disappeared. Let's go ahead and go into the text. So yesterday we talked about Jesus' family and who he decides as a family and creating a new family by calling his disciples and the people who are part of his efforts, his family. Today we're going to talk about a method that Jesus uses to teach things and that gives him quite a considerable advantage in doing so and addressing social issues in a safe and respectful way. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. And this actually is described by Jesus himself. He tells them why he chooses to speak in parables. And also we're going to look at a couple of mentions of it in the beginning earlier in Jewish history and why that was important for Jesus to note that. So let's go ahead and jump into the text. And it's Matthew chapter 13. We're actually skipping a small section, which is like the first parable that is shared. But I wanted to talk about what a parable is first. So that way on Monday when we come to the first parable, we'll understand what it's all about and we'll know what to look for. So let's go to Matthew chapter 13, verse 10. And the disciples came and said to him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" He answered and said to them, "Because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, Hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. For the heart of this people has grown dull, their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn, so that I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For assuredly I say to you that many people and righteous men desired to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it." So what in the world does all of that mean? Right? What's a parable? What's Jesus talking about? Why is it important to him that some people hear and some people don't? So let's go ahead and unravel that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the word parable itself. So in the Greek, this is a construct word which is used a lot of times in Greek to bring two different meanings to a combined meaning. And parable, the two words are para and balo. So parable. Para means to be aside, to be beside, or to be alongside of. It's a sense of being with something, close up by it. And then balo is the word for casting or throwing. And so the idea here is that a parable is a story that is cast out or put out there alongside of the conversation that is being talked about in order to provide a metaphor or a way for people to essentially grasp what's being said, right? Sometimes we need a story, sometimes we need some simple example to help us figure out how we can, put it into our worldview and understand it better. So why in the world does Jesus choose this, right? Why doesn't he just come out and talk about the people who are the problems? I mean, everybody else was in their society. They were talking about, single Pharisees or a couple of Sadducees or a group, and they were deriding them and casting, disparaging remarks at them. But the parable, the wonderful thing about this method that Jesus uses, it allows him to talk about very socially sensitive issues without naming names, without being yet another person who is slandering the opposite side, without being yet another person who has an agenda, a political agenda, by besmirching their opponent. Because the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious group, the leaders of that day, do not like Jesus. And he knows it. Everybody knows it. They've been calling him a demon and the devil. So Jesus needs a way to talk to them that allows him to be still a peacemaker, but address and teach certain ways of thinking. So then he goes into this comment about Isaiah, right? We've heard of this prophet before. He's in the Old Testament, which is the early history of Israel. And remember, I talked yesterday about the Babylonian captivity. That is what the time period that Isaiah really is important. It's just before the Babylonian kingdom comes in and takes out the religious leaders and young people from Israel. So Isaiah is this prophet who's talking about getting rid of all these foreign gods that Israel has begun to worship instead of worshiping Yahweh, which is their principal God. Isaiah is a really important figure for the Jewish people. So when Jesus is quoting him, that's significant, and they'll listen to that because they believe strongly in what Isaiah has to say. And in this particular instance where Jesus is quoting him, he's talking about a time when Isaiah, this prophet, was talking about a time in the future that will come eventually where a savior will come, somebody who will bring the kingdom back to the focus it's supposed to be on. And so he talks about this future person, whoever it is, he doesn't name names, that this individual will speak in parables or in stories so that the people who do hear it cannot understand it. They can see it, but they can't perceive it. What the heck does that mean, right? I mean, it's a general concept, right? But why is it important to Jesus that some people, when they hear this story, don't understand what's going on, and some people do understand? The reason for this is because of the way human society works. When we belong to a particular way of thinking, when we belong to a particular social environment that all thinks the same, for example, today, Republican or Democrat or Libertarian, we have our little groups, right? These stories, rather than attacking an issue and a person, which is what they're expecting, a story is told. And at that point, because their minds are so wrapped around this other worldview that is really causing a lot of harm, and they've justified it and they've put so much into it, they'll ignore the story, because to acknowledge the story for them means that they have to acknowledge all the things that they are doing wrong in society and all the hurts that they are doing. And the human mind oftentimes can't handle that. And so Jesus talking in parables, not only is it simple enough for people to understand of every economic level and education level, but it allows these people to know exactly what he's talking about. These people who are sick and being cast out by the churches and synagogues, these people, when they hear these stories, gives them a message of hope and understanding. The one thing that I also want to mention towards the end of this passage, and then I want to wrap up and talk a little bit about why this is important in our time today. The last thing Jesus says is that many prophets and many people before you would have done anything to be alive in these days. And why is that? Because Jesus recognizes that this is a turning point for the kingdom of Israel. He's coming to produce a whole new message, getting them back to the basics, the basic drills, the basic understandings, the basic virtues, peace, loving kindness, humility, compassion. Those are the basics, not all the ritual and pomp and circumstance that the religious leaders are so concerned about, but changing the people to understand what really the message is about. And at this stage, Jesus is saying, look, all these people have been waiting for that moment. You're lucky here to be alive. And I want to bring that forward right here, today, right now. We are lucky. We are lucky to be alive in this crazy, bizarre, disconnected, chaotic experience in life right now. I know it is tough. Believe me, I feel it every single day. Whenever I turn on the news or social media, it's challenging. But think about the realities that we get to enjoy right here and right now. We have the ability to have the entirety of the human intellect and knowledge at our fingertips in our phones. We have the ability to be healed from diseases that we never have been able to be healed from. We have the ability to talk to a person as if we were standing right there via video anywhere in the world to as many people as we want to right now. It's an amazing time to be alive. But these big, great things that we can be excited about also bring a lot of chaos because we as humans have not figured out yet how to live with them and how to use these responsibly. And that will eventually come, but it takes some time. The last thing I want to point out is just the story of the parable itself. Why is it important here and now in our time to use this method? I think it's an incredibly powerful tool for people right now because it allows us to talk about an idea or a concept or a moral lesson without naming names. Many of you know that I remain apolitical. I don't endorse any political candidate running for office, but I obviously have moral feelings. I have moral ideas. I'm trying to follow after these teachings that I'm learning and you're learning as we go along. We want to share those things with other people, right? We want to bring people hope. We want to bring them love. How do we do that? We don't do it by attacking the people that they endorse. It doesn't work. We don't do it by attacking the individual. We do it by sharing a concept and sharing an idea, a story. So what I would encourage you, if you are really working through something, think about a story that relates that in common terms and in common aspects. It'll help you understand it far more, and you can use it when talking with somebody else to give them something that you've thrown out there alongside your argument and who you are, for them to come to a place of understanding these wonderful virtues. I want to thank you so much for being with me and us all coming together for the Civil Human Bible Study. I've been having a great time, going to all these different locations. It's a lot of fun. I love the environments, and I'm really happy that I've actually been able to meet some of you while I've been on the road, and I want to thank you for that opportunity as well. And until Monday, live noon at Facebook, I want to say to you that I love you. And I hope that you choose to love yourself. It's the only love that we have any control over. And now I invite you to join me as we go about the rest of our day and the rest of our weekend, loving our neighbors the same way. Thank you.